story happened to a man named Alex, an experienced hiker who loved exploring remote trails. He'd spent years trekking through some of the most isolated forests in the Pacific Northwest, but nothing could have prepared him for what he encountered on a solo hike last fall. It was a crisp October morning when Alex set out on a trail deep in the Olympic National Forest. The trail was known for its rugged beauty, but it was also notoriously easy to get lost in. Alex had packed enough supplies for a 3-day hike, and he was confident in his skills. But as the sun began to set on the first day, he started to feel uneasy. At first, it was just a feeling, a prickling sensation on the back of his neck, like he was being watched. Alex brushed it off, thinking it was just his imagination. But then, he started hearing things. Whispers. Faint, almost inaudible, but definitely there. They seemed to come from all directions, like the trees themselves were murmuring. Alex stopped in his tracks, his heart pounding. He called out, "Hello! Is someone there?" But there was no response, just silence. Shaken, Alex decided to keep moving. He figured the sooner he reached his campsite, the sooner he could settle in for the night. But the whispers didn't stop. If anything, they grew louder, more insistent. And then, he saw it. A shadow, just out of the corner of his eye. It moved quickly, darting between the trees. Alex froze, his breath catching in his throat. He tried to convince himself it was just a deer or some other animal. But deep down he knew better. Animals don't move like that. They don't watch you. Alex picked up his pace, his heart racing. The whispers were louder now, almost like they were right behind him. He glanced over his shoulder and saw it again, the shadow, closer this time. And it wasn't alone. There were others, dark, indistinct figures, moving silently through the trees, keeping pace with him. Panic set in. Alex broke into a run, crashing through the underbrush, not caring about the branches scratching his face or the rocks tripping him up. He just needed to get away. But no matter how fast he ran, the figures stayed with him, always just out of reach, always watching. Finally, Alex burst into a clearing. There it was, his campsite, but something was wrong. His tent was torn to shreds, his supplies scattered everywhere, and standing in the middle of the clearing was a figure, a man, dressed in tattered clothes, his face obscured by shadows. He was staring directly at Alex. Alex's blood ran cold. He wanted to scream, to run, but he couldn't move. The man raised a hand, pointing at him, and then he spoke. His voice was low, guttural, and it seemed to echo in Alex's mind rather than his ears. "You shouldn't have come here." That was the last thing Alex remembered before blacking out. When he woke up, he was back at the trailhead, his gear scattered around him. His phone was dead, and his watch had stopped at exactly 3:17 a.m., the witching hour. He had no memory of how he got there, no explanation for what had happened. Alex never went back to those woods. He tried to report the incident to the local authorities, but they dismissed it as a case of dehydration or a bear encounter. But Alex knows what he saw, and he's not the only one. Other hikers have reported similar experiences in that area. Whispers, shadows, and a man in tattered clothes watching from the trees. To this day, no one knows who or what lurks in those woods. But one thing's for sure, if you ever find yourself on an abandoned trail and you start to feel like you're being watched, don't ignore it, because something might be watching you too.
You shouldn't come